You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
It is Tuesday, May 7th. It is still National Teacher Appreciation Week.
It is.
Managed to get the crock pot started for the fiesta today that we're doing at St. Mark's for all the teachers there.
Is it Taco Tuesday?
Well, I think so. I don't know if they're having tacos. They're having a fiesta lunch. I'm not sure if that includes
Cinco de Mayo too.
Tacos. Yes. Yeah, so got that going for them this morning. Thank you, teachers, for all you do. And just enjoyed sharing yesterday's story with them. And some of my teachers that found the story, shared it with them yesterday, so that was fun, too.
That was a lot of fun. We should do that again.
We should do that every day. Thank you, teachers.
Could.
We also need to thank our nurses this week, too.
Hey, yes, we do.
I
saw that on Facebook,
Nurse
too.
Appreciation Week as well.
We should do that.
And nurses have played a key role in providing care for us, especially those parish nurses. They work pretty hard. We've got some cool parish nurses around the area.
We do.
I know out in our neck of the woods, we have a cool one at an LSS community right next door, so we're very thankful for them as well. Mm-hmm. So thank you, nurses. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, everybody. Living out your vocations faithfully. Two great topics on deck today. It's May, which is kind of like October, which is Awareness Month.
It really is.
Awareness Month. A couple of awareness topics this month, and one of them is Lyme disease, which, if we want to talk about tick-borne illnesses, I could tell you a whole ton about that. But you're probably at the point where you've heard of someone that has experienced Lyme disease, and it's getting to the point now where you actually know someone who has experienced Lyme disease.
Yeah.
In that boat now, I do not have Lyme disease as far as I know, but I know someone who has Lyme disease, and excited to share her story today. And also, the Reverend Dr. Steve Shave, LCMS City Mission and church planting. He's going to come share with us a national conference that he went to in D.C. and what's going on in terms of meeting the needs of those in the city and around the country. So I hope you stick around for that as well. Thanks to our friends at Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu. Joining us this morning, Bethany Andrews. She's Director of Christian Education at Zion Lutheran Church, known as Zion Harvester in St. Charles, Missouri. Bethany, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, you are always so gracious and share your story of your encounter, your experience with Lyme disease. And with it being Lyme Disease Awareness Month, you've been sharing at least a post a day, if not more, just graciously sharing your story, helping us be aware of what is Lyme disease and what does that mean for you, especially looking at this disease with a Lutheran worldview, and what does that mean as a Christian when you encounter a disease, a malady like this, and you've done it so graciously. And I think just how you've gone about it is a good perspective for us to have, and also to increase awareness. When did you first learn that? When did you first get an idea that you might have Lyme disease?
It really actually didn't cross my mind until a doctor told me in 2012. I was bit by a tick in the summer of 2006. Our family vacationed in northern Minnesota when I was young, and I had been bit by a wood tick, not a deer tick, and at that point in time, they didn't think wood ticks carried Lyme disease. But I had a rash, and so I went to the doctor then, and he said, if the rash goes away, we won't worry about it. If it comes back or if it gets bigger, then we'll do something, and it went away. And so didn't really think about it again until the summer of 2011. I was a camp counselor at one of our Lutheran camps in Indiana, and was experiencing some really strange symptoms then, and went to the doctor a couple times, and finally they were like, it's MS. You should go get tested for multiple sclerosis and see a neurologist. And I was lucky enough to get in with a doctor who I fondly refer to as Dr. House. She's like my Dr. House, because she looks at the whole person, and she looks at the history. And after spending 3 hours talking with her in January of 2012, she looked at me and said, I think you have Lyme disease. And so it wasn't until then that it crossed my mind that tick bite from 6 years prior could be connected to what I was experiencing at that point in time.
It's so great to have your own personal Dr. House.
Yes.
But finding doctors like that can be can be a real challenge when you have a lot of strange symptoms that don't really seem to match anything exactly. What were some of those challenges right at the beginning of right around your diagnosis?
Yeah, so I had been experiencing it. Started with numbness and tingling in my hands that spread to my face and my legs and the rest of my body. And so that was just really strange. And at the time it was started, we thought stress. I'm a camp counselor working summer camp, not a lot of sleep. Was a college student. Like, there's
no stress there.
None.
No stress whatsoever. And so we chalked it up to that, but it progressively got worse and ended up with heart pain and severe fatigue and exhaustion. Basically felt like I had been hit by a bus for multiple months on end, and just some intense nerve pain as well. And so, not symptoms you can go to a typical doctor, urgent care, and just say, these are my symptoms, tell me what I have. And so, yeah, thankfully I had this connection to this doctor, and she was brave enough to know what Lyme disease was and how to treat it and to do that research. And it was really her learning with me and with other patients, because doctors don't always treat Lyme. Some doctors don't even think it can exist in bodies past 6 weeks. And so for me, it had been 6 years. It can live dormant in the body. The bacteria can, and build up defenses, which is what had happened in my body. And so having a doctor who was brave enough to say, let's treat this and let's try this, when at the time it wasn't highly favored in the medical community to do that. Thankfully, that's starting to change, but it's still a challenge within the Lyme community and those who deal with tick-borne illness and disease, because it's something we can't see, and it's something there isn't a lot of research behind to prove and to test for. So
I can certainly identify with that. I had some symptoms last year, and thankful to have a physician like yours, who was willing to think and look at other options and ask questions that not every physician would ask. And turns out I didn't have a gallbladder that was inflamed. I ended up having a tick-borne illness as well, alpha-gal syndrome. But that's a whole nother episode.
But I've been in that boat too, but not tick-borne. Completely different.
So I certainly can identify with, being so grateful to have a physician who asks those questions that aren't just the typical questions that, like you said, if you can't go to an urgent care and really get an answer to that necessarily, because it's questions that are outside of the box. But with the increase, I've been learning more and more about the increase of a variety of ticks that are just making their way into the Midwest here. And so I think we're going to see more increases of, an increasing rate of Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. Tell us about the process of being treated for Lyme disease. Once your physician said, I think this is Lyme disease, let's move forward. What was that process of treatment like?
So Lyme disease is tricky because it presents itself differently in every person. So for me, thankfully, our standard of treatment in the United States is 6 weeks of antibiotics. If you've been bit by a tick, that's the standard of treatment. So that's what we started with, was antibiotics, and then also supporting that with supplements and vitamins. So really the goal was to repair my immune system to be as strong as possible so that it could fight for itself, because it had been depleted so much. And on top of that, also trying to kill the bacteria. Because it's a bacterial infection, there are little bacteria bugs in your body that need to not be there anymore. And so one way is through antibiotics. But with Lyme, because every person is different, there is no, this is the set of antibiotics and the set of supplements every person needs to take, because everybody reacts differently. So when I was first diagnosed in January, we started with baseline, these are antibiotics that we know treat different parts of the life cycle of the Lyme bacteria, as well as your multivitamins, probiotics, and stuff that most people would take anyway, just to be healthy. And so my doctor, at that point, I asked her, I said, how long? And she said 3 to 6 months. But little did we know then that was not going to be the case. And it took us about a year to figure out the right combination of medication for me to really hit the Lyme bacteria hard. Because with Lyme disease, a lot of the time you will also get co-infections, which are things like babesiosis and Bartonella and Ehrlichia. You have to treat other bacteria as well then. And so it complicates the process. Thankfully, once we did figure out the right treatment protocol for me, within, I would say, 6 months, we saw massive improvement. And then I followed that. I actually did some hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment in Wisconsin for a month, which meant I went into a machine that looked like a submarine and wore an astronaut-type helmet. And basically, I was under pressure, but I breathed 100% oxygen, which gets that oxygen through, gets your blood cells circulate faster. It gets the oxygen into your red blood cells faster, which means the oxygen gets through your body and promotes cell growth and healing. And so that was the goal with that. And that really brought back a lot of my energy because at that point I was on the end of my antibiotic treatment and stuff like that. But it varies. Some people have to do IV antibiotics. We talked about that. We came close to that. Thankfully, didn't have to. We talked about a lot of other options as well. But it does vary from person to person, thankfully. I was able to treat it both with antibiotics and vitamins and then oxygen.
Going through just the process of finding the right treatment can be really challenging and just hard on your mental and emotional state. How did God provide for you in this time of questions and confusion and just challenging times? We have what, about 1.5 minutes.
Most certainly through people, through the right people that could speak truth into me when I needed to hear it most. Through his word, he was always there with that encouraging verse. But yes, when you go through a traumatic or a chronic illness, you learn who those people that support and love you are. And thankfully, that was a body of believers in my life and have continued to support and walk that journey with me. So.
Thanks be to God for those people who will, one, speak, like you said, speak that truth, speak the word of God to you to provide that word of truth that is so life-sustaining. And two, who won't look at you and think that you're totally crazy because you have these symptoms that don't seem to make sense to everyone else. So what do you want those of us who like to be outdoors, everyday people, to know about Lyme disease? We have just a half a minute left.
Just be aware. Make sure if you are bit by a tick that you seek treatment, and but don't be afraid either. Be outside. God's created something beautiful and has given it to us to experience and explore and enjoy. And I'm one of those people who still loves the outside. And so be aware, but enjoy it as well.
Bethany, thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour, and thanks be to God for your recovery. And so glad to hear that it's a story that you can share with others joyfully.
Thanks so much.
Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to check in with Reverend Dr. Steve Shave, LCMS City Mission, and church planting as well. Stick around. You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Eddie Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.